I've been looking at kind of Lightning Network metrics for a while. And in the last couple of months, I've been noticing some trends among, and again, these are the public facing Lightning metrics that everyone loves to use that may not be perfect indicators. In fact, they probably have a lot of noise in them. I'm talking about public capacity, number of public channels, number of nodes on the network. I've noticed that nodes seem to be roughly flat, maybe growing a little bit. The number of channels seems to be declining, and this has probably been true for the last 6 months or so. And then the capacity, the public capacity on the network has seen a couple of sharp drops in the last couple of weeks. And so, I think there's a lot of theories floating around about why that is. River, I know, announced that they kind of closed a few channels. That led to some of the public capacity drop. But more broadly, I'd love to get your take on the state of the Lightning ecosystem and some of these metrics and whether or not they line up with what you're seeing.
Yeah. So, it's essentially very easy to think sort of doom and gloom and see the network going sort of reducing. But the effect is that we've seen for a long time is that the average channel size is increasing, but the number of channels go down. Also, when you look at the capacity going down, I think it's a sign that capacity is becoming more and more efficiently used. Also, we see, of course, some of the routing nodes, the smaller size routing nodes dropping off because it's too much work or too risky for them to operate versus the reward they get. So that's sort of contributing a bit to that. And also larger operators accepting sort of limiting channels to higher and higher, sort of larger and larger channels. So there is sort of a mix of effects there. When it comes to these large channel count drops that we've seen recently from River and others, River confirmed that it was sort of a cleanup of channels. While I think that is true for a lot of these others as well, where they finally starting to get a bit more insight into what's going on with their node. And so is then able to choose channels to close and to identify either zombie channels or channels that just aren't really active and not contributing versus where the capacity is.
I see. Now, in the previous point you made about, companies may want to open up private channels, unannounced, kind of like, is that a bigger contributor to the Lightning ecosystem today than it was when we last spoke a little over a year ago?
I think so, yeah. So I think that most of the large companies have, especially in capacity, they have a lot of capacity in private channels. So it's going directly between, something like probably Bolts and Breeze and other markets and River and all kinds of combinations. For example, IBEX has a lot of private channels and I suspect, and OpenNode as well. So it's very common.
Is there a way to make an educated guess? I mean, from your point of view, having a little more insight than the average person into, the inner workings of the Lightning Network, can you make an educated guess as to how much capacity is held in these private channels?
No, sorry. I really have no idea on the ratio between the private and the public channels. That's very hard, but can't really say anything direct.
Okay, I'll slightly rephrase it. If I offered you a bet that there was more, if I said there's 5,000 Bitcoin in public capacity, and I said there's 5,000 Bitcoin in private capacity, and you have to pick over or under on the private, which one are you picking?
It's actually a really tough question. First, I thought it was obvious to be the public, but there are non-custodial operators who have a very large amount of private channels to different users. And also there are large capacity channels between these large operators directly. So it could be that it's about 50-50, but I have no idea.
Yeah, that's fair.
I would maybe take the bet that it's on the public side.
Okay. Now, when you're seeing companies like River having decided to clean up some of their channels in the public space, do you think that is also happening on the private side as well? Or are people cleaning up public channels to open new private channels?
That's a good question. I'm not sure how much private channels are used in sort of the smaller nodes that are running on their own hardware, like Umbrels and these. Yeah, no insight into that part of it.
Mm. And are there any other, beyond these three metrics that are so commonly cited, and they seem to be like, to anyone kind of like casually observing the Lightning space, those are the first three metrics they check. And if any one of those metrics change, they kind of, their ears perk up and they go, whoa, what's wrong with Lightning, or what's happening? Are there any other activity metrics that either you're tracking or that you think provide a better signal into the adoption, the actual usage we're seeing on the Lightning Network?
So yeah, there's a few bit more subtle ones. So one is actually seeing the average channel size increasing. That's in my head a good sign, because it means that the liquidity is being more efficiently used and there is increased usage in that larger and larger payments are going through. And also you can see I think it was like 5% of the network controls 85% of the capacity in the network, which means that there's a reason that it's allocated that way. It's not because of centralization. It's because that's where the capacity is needed. So that shows when we see that part of it growing, we see that pie, more capacity being allocated to the large operators, we see that the usage of Lightning is increasing. So a simple way of saying it is, if you're a private individual, you don't need $20,000 on a node. But if you're a large company, you might need $1 million on a node. And that makes up why we have these why the distribution is the way it is.